Well, good morning. It's good to be with all of you. I always like to kind of come up with a title or a theme that captures the talk, and you can tell me after if you think it works. So here's the title of this one. Your body is not a thing, and it's not yours either. That's the topic of our conversation today, if you will. And I wanted to actually start with an image to ground the talk, because it's an image that actually inspired this talk. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen, if I can do that right from here. This is an image from the recent Final Four in San Antonio. And I was lucky enough to go to this past weekend with my uncle and my cousin flew in from out of town. This is an actual picture from our seats in the game. I think this is actually the championship game. I can't remember. I took a bunch, but this is the championship game between Houston and the University of Florida. There are 68,000 plus people in this square or rectangular box. And as I was in this experience, this is the image I wanted you to have in mind that inspired this talk. And particularly pay close attention to one of the two indoor blimps that are circulating said space with 68,000 people, because the blimp is going to be really the source of this talk more than anything else. So that's the image to hold in your mind. So a few days ago, I attended the Final Four, and I was struck. In fact, I leaned over to my dad, who is not a practicing Buddhist, in fact, is a former preacher. And I said, I think if there's anything that is the opposite of a Zen retreat, it's probably this right now. All sorts of noise and attachments emblazoned on bodies and in uniforms. It was a wild mess of humanity. Delightful, but intense. So as I sat there, kind of beneath the jumbotrons, and all the pounding rhythms of the music, it is so loud in a space like that. Even I realized at the end of the day, I wasn't rooting for any particular team. I'd come home and my voice was gone just from trying to have conversations with people sitting next to me. And I was kind of less captivated by all the spectacle, and I got to thinking about the role of bodies in this space. What does it mean to have a body, and how do we sort of relate to our bodies? So on the court, you have these amazing athletes. Their physical forms are sculpted and meticulously over the years, who are doing things that seem unfathomable to me with a basketball. Even as a former high school basketball player, it's remarkable what these human beings can do. They perform with mesmerizing grace and intensity. And in the stands, you have different kinds of bodies. Cheering, adorned with team colors, their faces and often their bodies, painted head to toe sometimes, and their collective identities distilled into these weird communal chants and rituals. Everywhere I looked, I saw a distinct a distinct theme emerging, that the body was being treated as an object everywhere, something instrumentalized, commodified, and ultimately possessed. And that's what really stood out to me about this blimp moment. They released these two blimps during one of the breaks, halftime maybe. And they're sponsored by Capital One. And they had one that was the Magic Johnson blimp and one that was the Charles Barkley blimp. And there was some sort of competition that I couldn't quite figure out. And there was, it was bizarre. But they would dispense these little tickets, I think, for just free food. But you would look up at these throngs of people sticking their hands in the air, trying to grab the little coupon things that were being dispensed as an advertising ploy. And I had the sense of oh, we're being instrumentalized right here. All our humanity is being treated as being fed by this kind of weird corporate desire for greed, corporate greed and desire for more. And I was actually deeply uncomfortable. I was enjoying the game up until that, even the throng and the madness, but there was something about seeing bodies commodified in this way that was really alarming. And so you started to think about this idea of kind of utility. And so athletes' bodies are measured for the utility and marketability. And with the new marketing laws, now college kids who are playing these games are making literally hundreds of thousands, if not sometimes millions of dollars, while playing amateur sports. And the fans' bodies were sort of vessels of allegiance, clad in all these various things. And then you had this kind of overlying feel, or this overwhelming feel that all of us are here because somebody else's will in play. And it was a deeply uncomfortable experience for a little bit, but it really underscored for me like how deeply and how strong our sense is that our bodies are ours or that they are possessed. And I started to question that a little bit. I said, the question became, what if we reconsider our bodies? What if our bodies aren't possessions at all? And what if they aren't things at all? So what I'm going to explore is take a sense of what our practice has to say about the nature of the body, a little bit about emptiness, and then a few other kind of philosophical musings that tie into that. So for some of this, I'm going to read things that I've written, other things I'll just kind of talk with you about this. But the first one I think about, we've been doing a lot of work with the skandhas, with rupa, in particular, one of the 5 skandhas, which is often translated simply as form. And I really like Musang's definition of this as it's not form as a fixed, durable thing. And I think Kim and Joel talked a bit about this, but it is the appearance of form. So what seems to be solid is actually just a series of processes engaging in a particular way, in a way that we experience as solid. So it's not as commonly imagined a static entity or fixed in space. Rather, it's a dynamic interplay of changing elements and conditions, ever in flux, never truly solid. And so Musang says, when he's reflecting on form as emptiness, emptiness as form, he says, the void of the Eastern mystics gives birth to an infinite variety of forms, which it sustains and eventually reabsorbs. So he echoes the sort of Buddhist understanding that our physical form is inherently impermanent, continuously arising and dissolving in response to countless causes and conditions. That's what a body really is, this kind of crazy process. And there are all sorts of people who are thinking this way. As I was doing my dissertation research, I was really drawn to the work of a philosophical point of view called the New Materialists, Karen Barad and others, Jane Bennett, who argue that matter, including our bodies, is vibrant, dynamic, and continually interacting. In this view, bodies are not inert, but processes of ongoing becoming. Relational fields continually shaped and reshaped by their environments. So from this view, things that we previously considered to be fixed and static become a lot more dynamic, a lot more relational. And most of what we tend to think of as things are more like snapshots of stuff in motion. And the way I think about it is, I have a picture of my son, Parker, when he was about 4, running through a field. It's super cute. He's just running through, his hair, smiling, and my wife and I are in the background just laughing, watching him run amok. But that's more like what these bodies of ours are. It's a snapshot. We think of them. But if we were to we would never mistake that picture of my son for the boy. We just realize it's an image we have of something that's whirling and changing all the time. And our bodies are a little bit more like that than anything else. And so I have a couple of questions for you before we go any further. Do you experience your body more as a static object or as a dynamic process? Do you experience your body more as a static object or a process?
That's one gift of age. It is so clear that the body is not what it used to be.
Uh-huh. What about others? Is it a thing or is it a process for you most of the time?
I think it goes back and forth for me.
How so? Say more.
when there's some kind of pain or when something feels good, then it's more of something moving. And when I'm just still, nothing's happening, then it's more static.
I sort of have the opposite of what Joe and Kim are saying, which is
good.
I'm currently experiencing back pain, and it's very localized.
Yep.
And so to me, it feels like my body is a solid thing, as opposed to something ethereal.
Yep. As we're talking right now, my shoulder is killing me. Like it just hurts from, we were doing a bunch of yard work and whatever else. I'm like, I'm trying to tell you this is a process, but it sure feels like a thing right now. Lisa.
Yes, it seems, my experience in my body seems to be very fluid, which would indicate that it's a process. But at times it seems to be very solid, as when I'm in the moment, or even in an instant, is when I'm trying to address a medical issue, so-called medical issue with my so-called body. You know, there's a process, right? I mean, there is a process. So in the moment that I'm reporting and gathering data, and my body seems kind of solid. But then everything around my body is dynamic because I have decisions to make that keep changing about how much I want to do to keep this process going. So, you know, it's not permanent, right? So how do I want to approach this impermanent? Do I want to have some control over it? Anyhow, a good question, Nate. Thank you.
I think that the body is both all the time, and we notice aspects of it according to our other senses that are awake and paying attention. Or not, because the body was doing something so much that they want you to know about it. Don't forget this, you know. I think recently I've been having a sense from various places, including inside myself, that the important thing in our practice combined with our thinking or whatever, I've come to think of my body as a community. And it's not one that my thinking mind can tell it what to do. But I find that my body does respond to different kind of caring than is the medical or is, you know, that. This is a big and important thing for us to get a grasp on.
Yes.
And I would quite agree with what Lisa was saying in terms of aging makes you a lot more appreciative of what we've had and what we have now, as well as some things that we didn't quite get earlier in our lives, like slow down, you know, a lot of things. But I think it's helped me thinking of my body with every cell of it having a Buddha nature, and that we are a community.
Thank you, Becky. These changing bodies certainly are an interesting whinging on or whining on about how much things hurt or whatever else and talking about my body. At one point I was having a practice discussion with Peg, this is a year or so ago, and she said, I'm going to give you a koan. And she goes, it doesn't get any better than this. Just like, I looked at her so sideways, and I'm like, that's a beer commercial, isn't it? Or was it? It's like, yeah, but it really is, in the sense of, in this moment, my body as it is, or my experience as it is, it doesn't get any better than this. And it became a sort of practice edge for seeing things as a process in a particular way. It was an opening. So I'll offer that to you if you want to borrow the koan and work with it yourself. Let me know what you discover. I think the second thing that started to arise for me is that we make a lot of, cause a lot of harm to ourselves and to others when we make the body into a thing, and then we take ownership of it and we think of it as ours, as being possessed. So we habitually speak of my body. The language implies ownership, control, and autonomy. And if anyone's sitting here with any sort of pain, my guess is you feel like you don't have as much control or autonomy as you would like. Yet upon a little more inspection, our bodies defy control. You can't halt aging. You can't prevent illness. You can't avoid pain through sheer will. And the discrepancy between our perception of control and the reality of our body's autonomous nature reveals a kind of critical delusion at the heart of our self-concept. And by autonomous, I mean independent of what we wish it would do and be. So I think one of the things that we'll do in a little bit is I'll give you we'll work with a piece from the Satipatthana about how to engage with your body and be mindful of it to confront this illusion of ownership. And the Satipatthana, for those who've studied sati, meaning mindfulness, and it's a path towards mindfulness, instructs practitioners how to cultivate this kind of intimate, unattached relationship with being, and it starts with your body. But I wanted to start with this before we get into that guided meditation. How do you, when I say that the body is not yours, it's not something to be owned, but it's just a process to be experienced, what comes up for you?
Yeah, I think about what I keep thinking about is how the Buddha said, save the body, and how important it is to be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me, Kim?
Barely. I'm worried about them too.
You know, so I think that what's coming up for me is that there's a middle way to say the body is not a thing, feels not it.
Mm-hmm.
And to say focus or objectify the body is not it. Would you say that?
Rosemary.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, this is a great discussion, and one of the things that happened with me with Zen was that with slowing down and being silent, my body started speaking. This was totally new to me, and the first big thing that happened was that the red thread of sexuality started speaking to me in a new way, and that was like, oh, what are you're speaking like? Who invited you? But yeah, so I think that's a big and the connection between the mind and the body in terms of what the body is telling us. You know, with for me, you know, tension, emotional tension is going to go to my abdomen. I'm going to have some tension there. So it's information, and I would say that's pretty dynamic and pretty, you know, it's like, yeah, my mind can't control that. It might want to, but it's the body is aiding in my understanding, in my mental understanding of what's going on. So that's a whole interesting and fruitful area. One more thing is that as a dancer, my connection with my body was to absolutely possess and control and tell it what I wanted it to do, or what the teacher was telling me that I should tell the body what to do. So the idea of listening versus instructing and controlling was it's a totally different way of thinking about it. So thank you so much for the question.
Of course. And I think that you started us with that mind-body tension where we start to imagine it. Show me a mind without a body. Show me, a body without a mind, in the same way that we have these ways that are conventional ways of speaking that are just gestures at our experience, our subjective experience. If we zoom out a little bit, you start to see this sort of entanglement of process of all of those things. But we can take those things that we understand are approximations and make them really concrete and make interesting decisions based on that.
I'm taking a slightly different angle on this, and it's something I actually came to your Dharma talk with. And that it's about my body and it's about the bodies of others. And it's something that deeply troubles me. Sometimes the illusion of ownership. And so when I read about wars, I'm so deeply aware. Physical wars, we're using other people's bodies as weapons. So what is the ownership? We're using people's bodies as weapons to kill other living bodies. I'm reading a book about the Devil's Highway crossing the border from Mexico to the US. Coyotes, it makes it very clear. Coyotes are transporting their human baggage for profit across the border. Sometimes they lose the baggage. So, I experienced that rather viscerally as with my body. What if I were that piece of human baggage? So it gives me the awareness, like, wow, it's pretty amazing that I'm sitting in this room, that I'm not a piece of human baggage. We have the belief that we possess our bodies. We have the belief that everything I do with my body is a choice. We don't always examine how our bodies are influenced. That's just briefly a concern I have that came up as soon as you said bodies. That's
Funny.
it.
Even just the voicing of those things brings a lot up. And I think, I have worked a lot of my life in low-income communities, and worked predominantly with Black boys and girls as a teacher and an educator. And I'm keenly aware that the way that the world perceives Black bodies in particular is quite different than how it perceives my white body moving through the world. And so these ideas we have about what a body is, how concrete it is, whether it can be owned and controlled, are more pervasive than we can think on the day-to-day. And opening it up to seeing it as a process is an interesting move. Some other things become available. Joel.
Hey, this is such a great question, and thank you so much for this. I've been following what everybody else has been sharing, and I've kind of lost the thread of the actual question you started for.
It's all right.
With this at this moment, but I wanted to say that what this is bringing up for me is what is called the great matter of birth and death, and that is a part of the ongoing process, that we are alive and our conscious awareness passes in and out through the different processes that are ongoing, whether or not we connect with them, and that is a mini version, a kind of metaphorical version of a whole life in any given moment, that we're coming into being and we're passing away from connection with this actual life that we're living. in much the same way that we come into being, you know, without any volition of our own, and maybe die kicking and screaming, but maybe also again without any volition of our own. It's just an ongoing process, and that that has something to do with why it's important. Pay attention right now. As Peg said to you, it's not going to get any better than this, or it doesn't get better.
Yeah.
This is really it. And that was such, thank you for making that quotation.
Yeah. Thank you. It does invite us to explore the mystery a little bit. When if it's not a thing that you own, if your body is not a thing that you own, then what is this? And the mystery and the play around that and the responsibility for that, the care for it are open at our, that's the invitation that's there. I think Leah, you're up.
Hi. Hi, Nate.
Hi.
Thank you for offering this today. I the last 2 weeks I've suddenly came into relationship with my mom's body and
Oh,
my father-in-law's body as they physically are deteriorating from the brain down, and
mm,
their autonomic nervous system, it and it's talked about by doctors and people as if they're things, uh, but I am experiencing a very it almost feels like we are suddenly have created like a new sangha, you know. It's very relational because as they lose their own ability to think about their bodies, to care
mm,
for their bodies,
mm,
um, it becomes a community and a very relational um, situation. So there's this really big contextual shift in myself to relate to this change. Um, and it is the most intimate sangha I've ever been a part
mm,
of, I feel. Yeah. And it caused all the practices, moment by moment.
mm.
That's my reflection.
Thank you so much for that. And for those of us either who have aging bodies or are caring for aging bodies or others in our lives, that invitation to that recognition of relationship and the way that we're relating is so rich and deep, and heartbreaking.
Yeah, I was, Manuel, like with low back pain, I can identify with that, and my back was out for like the whole month of January. I had all these plans, and sort of what comes up for me is that it's like, and I knew like it's just gonna be some matter of weeks before I'll be like my body. I really didn't want to do things, but you don't really have control over it. And I think Leo was saying from the brain down, like that other piece of like like I work with people living with dementia, and the body includes the brain, and people that are have a diagnosis some may why did this happen, what could be different, like how could I have whatever, and it's like it comes very clear to me that it's like that we don't own. Like we don't own our brain, we don't own our body. We wouldn't have made these choices if it was up to us. Like we would not do this. And it wasn't anybody's fault. Like this is what happens, at times for some people with, their brains and bodies. And like, what does this, I know there's this entanglement, but you see, it's like in my head, it's like, well, all of this is like, it can be a gift that we're given and take away and be taken away. And then the other part is like when I worked in hospice care, you know, like when somebody's in these last stages and they're dying, a lot of families worry about that process and like what that will, you know, what will happen, and will they die peacefully, and will they, you know, and it's amazing that the body knows what to do. Like the brain may have dementia, or the body may have cancer, or whatever it is, but the body does like a very similar thing, you know, throughout different people, and we thinking mind is not where it's happening, you know. So like it has its own process, which to me feels it's awful when they have that thing, you know, but it's, in some ways it feels liberating that I don't have to teach or control this thing, you know. It's like it's gonna do what it's gonna do.
Thank you. So how do we, and for me, that invites that question of how do we relate to these bodies of ours and to the bodies around us if they're not things that we own, if even our brains are not our own, if the pain that we experience is beyond our control, and how do we relate to these things? And so if it's all right with you, I'd like to do a really brief guided meditation to tinker in that space. And we'll use that's just sort of my abbreviated take of some of the moves in the first few moves of the Satipatthana. So I'll invite you to get to a comfortable seat. And go ahead and just begin by finding a balanced posture, sitting upright and relaxed. You can close your eyes gently or soften your gaze downward. Either is fine. Bring your awareness gently to your breathing. Feel the natural rhythm of your breath. Without changing or controlling it. Notice the sensations of breathing. Coolness at the tip of the nose. Warmth leaving. Rest here for a moment. Simply observing breath arise and pass away. Expand your awareness to the posture itself. Feel clearly how the body is positioned, sitting here, balanced and stable. If you shift or move slightly, observe that moment mindfully. Or if something cramps or tightens, just notice it with a little awareness. Noting its beginning, middle, and end. Recognize how posture itself is simple, is a simple, ever-present experience of embodiment. Now gently reflect on your current experience of mindfulness. aware and purposeful. Open. Extend this mindful awareness to subtle bodily sensations. Swallowing, blinking, or adjusting slightly. Feel this clear awareness suffusing ordinary moments, ordinary movements, each unfolding. Now bring a little gentle curiosity to your body's internal landscape. Notice briefly the different aspects of your physical form. Your skin enveloping the body. Through the head, neck, shoulders, torso, hips, legs, down to the feet. Notice your bones giving structure. Steadiness. Notice the quiet pulse of your organs, your heart, your lungs. Consider it gently. All these parts function without your direct command, existing impermanently, constantly changing. Notice your reaction to these parts, any attachment or aversion that arises, and meet it gently, without judgment. Allow yourself to experience the body as an interplay of these elemental sensations, shifting and flowing continuously. When you're ready, gently open your eyes and softly re-engage with your surroundings. And I'd love to hear anything that you noticed.
Well, it was very tender. A sweet acceptance, hearing what it's saying.
Sometimes I feel like these little, even just a little blip like this in the day, for me, in a dense work day or some of the thing where I don't have time to sit down and do a full meditation in the middle of the day, but I can take a couple of minutes to check in with my body, with this body that might not be mine, and see what's moving and what's doing, and choose how to relate to it a little bit. Yeah.
It's interesting when someone says, pay attention to something you haven't been paying attention to, and it's like, oh, and especially when it's so close.
Yeah. When it's there. Marla.
I realized that I, have a lot of stuff on my mind lately, and I've been struggling in Zazen to soften the waves. The waves are really crashing loudly over the ocean, and so I've accepted that. But I have recently discovered, and especially with your guided meditation, that I am responding to someone directing my Zazen and telling me what to do. And I'm not doing that very well, and it's just me, and I'm responsible for my own experience. So, there's meta Zazen and this kind of guided meditation is wonderful, but I want and need to get back to taking accountability self for the guidance. So that was an aha for me.
Rosemary, I think you'll be our last word.
I just wanted to say gratitude was just running through the whole meditation. Gratitude for everything that the body was providing me. Yeah, that was what was happening. Thank you so much for that.
Well, it's not traditional in our tradition to do a benediction. I'll do a short one here of sorts. Your body is a sacred field of impermanence, relationships, and continuous becoming. Step forward into it, not as owners, but as mindful participants in the rich unfolding mystery of existence. Thank you very much.